Open world games have become arguably the biggest genre in gaming today. Especially in this generation, we've seen a rapid increase in the number of open world games on the market. Even games from series that weren't known for open world games, suddenly they are going that route. Metal Gear Solid 5, Mirror's Edge Catalyst, Homefront The Revolution, there's so many games that are follow-ups to games that were more linear but now are open world. Gamers obviously aren't complaining, there's a reason why we love open worlds in our video games. Whether it's the sheer amount of content that games such as The Witcher 3 or Fallout 4 provide, or it's the sense of freedom we get from a game like Just Cause 3, there's just something alluring about open world games that has caused it to take over the gaming scene this generation. But first, let's go back a few generations, back to the PS2 and the Xbox era where open world games were really few and far between. Grand Theft Auto was a juggernaut in the gaming world, and games like Morrowind were also gaining traction, but for the most part, developers went the route of creating more linear experiences, especially considering graphical demands were kind of high given the hardware available, and making big worlds in games was rather difficult. Things largely stayed the same with the next generation with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Bethesda was releasing Oblivion and Fallout, Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto 4, and those were the primary open world games people saw in the 7th generation of consoles, at least for the early part. Crackdown was also released on the Xbox 360, and while that game was very good, a major part of that game's success was due to the fact that the Halo 3 beta was included with it. 2007 brought the release of Assassin's Creed, and while the first game wasn't promoted on the basis of having a giant world, future entries made the game's worlds bigger and bigger, and at this point the series is synonymous whenever you talk about the genre. Then somewhere in the middle of the 7th generation is where open world games really started gaining some steam. You saw titles such as Just Cause 2, Infamous, Red Dead Redemption, and of course the game that really took the world by storm, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. That game was a phenomenon, and its performance in terms of critically and commercially was through the roof. And then towards the end of the PS3 and Xbox 360's life, you saw more and more open world games, Sleeping Dogs, Grand Theft Auto 5, and so on. This generation of consoles with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, it's become very evident that open world games are the most popular games on the market. And developers obviously started taking note of that too. You had franchises such as Fallout and Assassin's Creed still prominent in the gaming world, and then games such as The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Metal Gear Solid 5, Batman Arkham Knight, Just Cause 3. It got to the point where every year you can rattle off 10, 12, even 15 big open world games releasing in that year, and that's much higher than ever before. Now, not all of these games are great. You can't just slap on an open world and expect it to add so much quality and sales to a product. Homefront The Revolution and Mirror's Edge Catalyst are two games that, yes, they added an open world setting, but they didn't fare all too well, at least from a review standpoint. Other games like Metal Gear Solid 5, some might say sacrificed in its story, and some may have hoped that now being on the 8th generation consoles that performance would have gotten better. Games of last generation such as Skyrim, Fallout, etc. performed so poorly, whether it be frame rate issues or glitches, it just wasn't pretty. You would have hoped that going into a new generation that some of those issues would have been fixed with better hardware, but not really. Just Cause 3 had problems, The Witcher 3 had its issues, and don't get me started on Fallout 4, especially on PS4. Now obviously all of these games from a visual standpoint do look far better than their last generation counterparts, but the fact that they still perform pretty poorly is still a talking point. However, for the most part, I think gamers would agree that this open world gaming boom has been mostly positive. We've seen a game like The Witcher 2, which was pretty linear and contained, where its sequel was this massive open world game with so much more engaging content being a gigantic improvement. Now where do we go from here? How are the future of open world games shaping up? We've got Mafia 3 releasing in the fall, and this is another game where Mafia 2 was very linear, and now Mafia 3 has got this gigantic open world. The game is looking pretty good. It's been a while since we got a Mafia game, so that's pretty exciting. Final Fantasy 15 is a different kind of open world. It won't be a game where you can freely explore the entire world right off the bat. It'll introduce more and more sections as you progress through the game, which is interesting and a great way to approach world design, because this could keep some of the gameplay a bit more contained, whereas if you had the entire world available from the start, it could get a bit jumbled, especially with a game like Final Fantasy, which is story-driven. We know that the Saints Row developers and Volition are working on Agents of Mayhem, a new open-world game with a lot of Saints Row undertone. Sony's got their big exclusive in Horizon Zero Dawn coming in 2017, and that looks like a very promising open-world game. That's another game that's a technical marvel, and we don't know how PlayStation Neo is gonna come into play with that. Ghost Recon Wildlands is another game that has all the potential in the world. No Man's Sky, while it's been delayed again, it's taking the open world formula to an extreme by becoming an open universe game, with procedurally generated planets pretty much creating many open open worlds. There's a lot of potential in the upcoming games, and while not all of them will probably be home runs, some games are going to be better contained in a linear environment. Gaming shouldn't get to a point where open world is the only design gamers appreciate. I couldn't imagine a game such as Wolfenstein or Metro succeeding in an open world format. Regardless, it's clear as day for anyone to see that open world games have become more popular than ever and developers have a lot more planned. Let us know what you think. Do you like the boom of open world games, or do you prefer your more contained gaming experiences? Obviously, there's room for both, but let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.